Okay, so we're going to talk about two airplanes from World War II. But this isn't really a story about planes, not at all. It's a story about two totally different ways of thinking, two clashing ideas about how to innovate. And I promise you, buried in this old story is a blueprint, a powerful lesson that speaks directly to the challenges you and I face right now, today.
Listen to this. No enemy bomber can reach the roar. If one reaches the roar, my name is not Göring. You may call me Meyer. I mean, wow, that's not just confidence, that's pure arrogance. This is coming from Hermann Göring, the second most powerful guy in Nazi Germany, right at the start of the war. He's literally putting his name on the line, telling the whole world, we are untouchable.
Okay, now let's jump forward. It's not even 4 years later. The date, January 30th, 1943. And this isn't just any day. This is a huge deal in Germany. It's the 10th anniversary of the Nazis taking power. The whole nation is listening as Göring himself steps up to a microphone in Berlin to give this big, triumphant speech. The mics are hot, and then it starts. That sound. The air raid sirens wailing right over his head. In the capital. Everything he promised, about to be blown to bits live on air.
What happens next? It's not just about bombs. It's about psychological warfare. It was a perfectly timed, deeply personal humiliation. And the thing that did it? It wasn't some giant fleet of bombers. No, it was something the Nazis literally believed couldn't exist.
So get this. 3 planes. Just 3. And they're made of plywood and balsa wood, like the stuff you'd use for a model airplane. At exactly 11 a.m., they come screaming over Berlin, flying at over 400 miles per hour, way up at 25,000 feet. The German fighters scramble, but they can't even touch them. They're too high, too fast. Bombs drop, and boom, Göring's speech is knocked right off the air. Can you imagine the chaos? People who were there said when he finally got back on the radio, he was just seething with rage. And the Brits, oh, they were just getting started. To really twist the knife, another 3 Mosquitoes show up that afternoon right on time to interrupt the speech by propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. It was just brutal.
Now look at this. Less than 1%. What is that? That's the Mosquito's loss rate. Let that sink in. For every 100 missions deep into enemy territory, maybe 1 plane wouldn't come back. Now compare that to a big, heavy bomber like the Lancaster. They were often losing 5 planes, sometimes more, out of every 100 on a single mission. You do that math, and you realize the Mosquito wasn't just effective, it was a ghost, a plane they couldn't shoot down. And for German morale, that was absolutely devastating. So, you gotta be asking, how? How is this even possible? A wooden plane dominating a sky full of metal fighters? Well, this gets to the heart of our story. This is the wooden wonder. And it's all about the genius of designing for your strengths. The secret sauce was this thing called a stressed skin monocoque. Big words, but here's what it means. The skin of the plane is the structure. Think of an eggshell. It's super light, but incredibly strong. The Mosquito's shell was a sandwich of birch plywood and balsa wood, all glued together. And this wasn't some old-fashioned idea. This was high-tech stuff for the time. The designer, a guy named Geoffrey de Havilland, he'd already perfected this method on racing planes that won huge international races back in the 30s. He basically took a proven winning race car design philosophy and applied it to a bomber. The result? Something as strong as metal, but at half the weight. Just incredible. But here's where it gets really, really smart. Choosing wood wasn't just about weight. It was a strategic masterstroke. See, Britain was running low on stuff like aluminum. But what did it have? It had an entire country full of master woodworkers. We're talking about people who build furniture, pianos, boats. Their skills were perfect for this. So overnight, a piano factory in one town and a furniture shop in another could start making parts for a cutting-edge bomber. This meant production was spread out all over the place, making it almost impossible for German bombers to disrupt. Plus, wood had these other weird advantages. It didn't show up on radar as well, and if it got hit, bullets often just passed right through instead of tearing up the whole structure. It was brilliant. And get this, the prototype Mosquito, a bomber, was so fast it was 20 miles per hour faster than a Spitfire. A Spitfire! That was the best fighter plane the British had, a legend. When the first intelligence reports about this reached Germany, they literally threw him out. They thought it was absurd propaganda. A bomber that can outrun a fighter? Impossible. It broke all the rules of what they thought they knew about aircraft design. But it was real.
So let's talk about the German reaction. Because this impossible plane, this wooden wonder flying wherever it wanted over their homeland, it drove the Nazi leadership absolutely crazy. This brings us to Section 3, Green with Envy. This wasn't just a rational threat anymore, it was an emotional one.
And again, those are Göring's own words, recorded by a stenographer into a 6-hour meeting where he just tore into his top aviation people. Think about what he's saying. He's not saying, we need to analyze their design and come up with a better solution. He's saying, I want what they have. This is a confession. The entire German response from this point on wasn't going to be driven by smart engineering or strategy. It was going to be driven by pure, raw envy.
So the order came down from the top. Build a German Mosquito. Not build something to beat the Mosquito. Build a copy. The job went to a top designer, Kurt Tank, and in a move that just screams desperation, they even named it the WW154 Mosquito. Can you believe that? They were so obsessed with copying it, they even copied the name.
And look, on paper, their version looked pretty impressive. They were aiming to make it even faster than the original, with fancy stuff like a pressurized cockpit and way bigger guns. They even found a special new glue to stick it all together. It looked like a solid plan. But here's the fatal flaw. They were copying the final product, the what, without having any of the system, the experience, the context, the how and the why that made the original work in the first place.
And that brings us to the inevitable conclusion. Section 4. A copy destroys itself. Because this is what happens when envy leads your innovation. It's a recipe for catastrophic failure.
Okay, you can't make this up. Remember how British production was spread out everywhere? Well, the Germans did the opposite. They relied on a single factory in a town called Wuppertal for that special superglue they needed. Just one factory. And in the most perfect terrible irony, in May 1944, guess who shows up? The Royal Air Force. And they bomb that one factory flat. So now the Germans are scrambling. They rush out a substitute glue. The only problem, the new glue was corrosive. It literally started to eat the wood of the plane it was supposed to be holding together. Their brand new Mosquitos started disintegrating in midair.
The final numbers here tell you everything you need to know. The British built almost 8,000 Mosquitoes. 8,000! The Germans? They managed to build about 70 of their copy. 70. And most of those never even saw fight. Many just fell apart. The whole program was a complete and utter disaster.
So why are we talking about this? Why does this story matter to you today? Well, this is innovation's true blueprint. This whole story is a perfect case study in the difference between real innovation and just blind copying.
Let's put it side by side. You have the Mosquito way. Look at what you actually have, design for your real strengths, and leverage your entire ecosystem. It's pragmatic, it's resilient. Then you have the Thomas 154 way. Just copy what your rival is doing, ignore your own weaknesses, and let emotion and desperation drive you. It's fragile, and it's doomed to fail. And this is the key takeaway, the thing I really want you to get from this. The lesson is not about wood versus metal, it's about context. The reason the Mosquito worked for Britain is the same reason the Ta-154 failed for Germany. What works for your competitor might be a total disaster for you. Why? Because you don't have their people, their history, their resources, their culture. Copying their final product is like trying to copy a flower by just sticking a petal in the ground. You're ignoring the roots, the soil, the sun, the entire invisible system that made it grow.
So that brings us to the final question, the one for you to think about. When you're facing your next big challenge, are you going to build your own Mosquito? Are you going to look inward at your own unique strengths, your own materials, your own team, and build something that only you can? Or are you just going to look over at what someone else is doing and let yourself get green with envy?